I'm very curious about the history of traditional medicine in the US.
Okay.
So when did it begin and how's the process?
Okay, so the history is very deep and detailed, so I'm just going to do a brief overview, okay? So generally speaking, we started to have a large influx of Chinese immigrants come to America in the late 1800s. At this time, they were doing a lot of things like building railroads, and they had a lot of, they played a large part in the gold rush in California and things like this.
Yeah.
So these communities started using traditional medicine, of course, at this time because they are bringing it from their home country, and they would treat their families and their friends and things like that, but also sometimes Americans would ask to be treated by them as well because everyone's mixing and mingling together and things like that. So that's kind of when it started. So in the 70s, I think it was 1974. It could have been 1976, but Miriam Lee, who is one of Dr. Dom's, I think she's one of his first students. I believe she studied under him directly. She was practicing in California out of her home, and she got arrested for practicing medicine without a license. But there was no license in order to, receive. So a lot of her patients came forward to her defense, and the governor at that time in California was Ronald Reagan. He later became a president, but at that time he was governor there, and he, with this situation that happened, decided to create regulations for acupuncture in California. So California, I believe, was the very first state who accepted acupuncture as a medicine, or traditional Chinese medicine as a medicine, and created licensure for that. So that's part of why California has different restrictions and regulations than a lot of the rest of America, because they were the first ones. So they established first, and are very tightly regulated in that way. So and then at that time too, President Nixon, or the president at the time was Nixon, and he had gone to China to open up trade relationship with China, and one of his staff, I can't remember who it was, he got an eye problem. I don't know if it was an infection or what it was, but I would have to do research. Yeah. But he got an eye condition, and it was treated by acupuncture and Chinese herbs, and it was very effective. So then with this, combined with the situation in California, acupuncture just became, or traditional Chinese medicine just became more accepted within America at that time.
Recognized.
Recognized. So I know that in the 70s, Texas passed a law, and I assume that probably New York did at that time too. So it kind of started from these three different areas, and it has expanded out over that time. But like I said, each state is different in its regulations. So for instance, Kansas, where I'm from, I had to go to school out of state because there's, at that time there was no regulation in Kansas, and so we were not allowed to have a traditional Chinese medicine school in Kansas. It wasn't accredited by the state board and stuff. So even though when I was there, I was practicing legally because of, I basically needed to practice under a doctor. I worked in a clinic. I ran my own clinic, but I was within a chiropractic clinic, and so it was able to pass by law in this way. But I was not able to get a state license because Kansas was one of 3 states left who did not allow state licensure. So there's a board of acupuncturists in Kansas, and they had been fighting it in the courts for about 35 years before finally in 2018, they finally passed a law that Kansas can get licensure. Just 2 years ago, you know. So they fought it very hard year after year in the courts to try to get this to pass, but because the Kansas Medical Board was so strong and had so much money behind it, they kept lobbying against the traditional Chinese medicine group and kept being able to essentially sway the votes to go against traditional Chinese medicine. So it took us a very long time, but we fought the battle and we won.
It took like lots of effort.
Lots of effort,
to reach the position right now.
That's exactly it, yeah. And so that just depends on your state. So if your state's very progressive and open, then things moved a lot quicker. But Kansas was very traditional, very skeptical, and so it took a long time.
Okay, so about traditional Chinese medicine, I feel like very lucky to be here in Vietnam.
I think so,
which is very highly acceptable.
Yes.
And we have a long history practicing Chinese traditional medicine.
Yeah, I think so. And I feel like everyone is, most everyone believes in it. And so it's not as, like you could, back home I remember previously getting into some big arguments and things about that.
I see. And nowadays, traditional medicine students, we learn both traditional medicine and Western medicine, and we are able to combine them to make the best treatment for our patients. And I think that's a good thing.
I really appreciate the combination medicine because I think that there is a lot of strengths in both medicines and weaknesses can be accommodated for each. So the weaknesses of Western medicine, traditional medicine can take up that slack and vice versa. And in America, traditional Chinese medicine practitioners absolutely treat complementary to Western medicine. But because of our laws and things like that, we learn about Western medicine because we need to learn about how to combine the two safely. But we're not allowed to make any diagnoses from a Western perspective or anything like this. We have to always send out to a Western doctor.
So, but I think even though we are not able to do that, but the more we know, the more the better we can do for our patients.
Absolutely, yes, for sure. Yeah.
So thank you for a very interesting conversation today.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing, and I hope that next time we can talk more about traditional medicine in your perspective and to help people understand more about traditional medicine in the US.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Thank you for talking with me.
Thank you everyone for watching our video. We hope that you receive valuable information and hope to see you next time. Thank you.
Bye.